Hello, my name is Mark Nickerson. I am an infantry private reenactor with the 109th Infantry Regiment, 28th Infantry Division, American Expeditionary Forces from World War I. We're going to today talk about the tank that I'm in right now. This is a model 1917 American-made 6-ton tank. We're going to today talk about the tank that I'm in right now. This is a model 1917 American-made 6-ton tank. Had a crew of two men. I'm in the driver's seat right now, and behind me, standing up, would be the gunner and commander. So a very small crew, very cramped quarters here. I'm going to open it up now, the hatches. The tank had angled armor, so a rifle shot or artillery shrapnel might bounce off of this armor, but if you took a direct hit from a German cannon or a heavy German machine gun using armor-piercing bullets, it would probably go right through this tank. And as you can see, it's very simple. Just levers. If you think of an old-time bulldozer or piece of road equipment, very similar to that. It was based off of, if it looks like the World War I French tank, the Renault, is because this is exactly what it was modeled off of. Many people mistake this model 1917 American tank for a French Renault. As a matter of fact, this tank and another tank were used in the movies. Many World War I movies from the 1920s through the 1940s feature the 1917 tanks, and we have good reason to believe that this one was used in some movies, because that's where this tank and one that's held in a private collection in Montana came from. The most famous American to operate tanks during World War I was then Lieutenant Colonel George S. Patton. If that name sounds familiar, of course, he went on to become one of the most famous American generals of World War II. But he got his start. He was the commander of the first American tank force to see combat in World War I, driving the Renault tanks that looked very similar to this. He led them into battle, and the first tanks were so new, he was the only one that knew how to drive them. So General Patton himself, as a young officer in World War I, spent several hours offloading his tanks from railway cars into the marshalling area because his crews didn't know how to drive them yet. So he had to train everybody before they could go into combat. And we have it open right now, but in combat, the doors would be shut and this front hatch would be shut, and there's only a tiny little slit for the driver to look through. The idea being, if you were charging into a German machine gun nest with Maxim guns firing, hundreds of rounds a minute at you, as well as German small arms fire, you didn't want to be open to being hit. So that's all they had to drive through. Now up top, this is the turret. This is a manually operated turret that the gunner tank commander, he had to tell the driver where to go, as well as manually operate either a 37 millimeter or a machine gun. The main gun on the model 1917 was a 37 millimeter cannon in some models, or a model 1917 Marlin machine gun in other models. So all depending what the mission was. The tanks like this were designed primarily as an infantry support vehicle. They were only designed to go as fast as a soldier could march in full pack with combat gear. Think of this as a moving pillbox, if you will. The infantry soldiers would follow close behind the tank. The tanks major mission was to knock over barbed wire entanglements, cross trenches, ditches, things like that, and the infantry to follow close behind after the tank had machine gunned the trench or the ditch. Then the doughboys could go in and finish mopping up. Or if they were very lucky, because tanks were such a new technology, many times the Germans hadn't seen tanks, they broke and ran out of fear for these big steel beasts. As you can see, it's very cramped in here. There's no air conditioning. There's no GPS. There's no modern comforts at all. So, and the engine compartment is right behind the driver. So if you could imagine on a hot summer day, you know, you've got the exhaust filling the compartment here, the heat, this steel getting hot. It was very uncomfortable for the drivers and the operators and the gunners in these early tanks. As with any new technology, the early tanks had a lot of growing pains, maintenance being one of the biggest problems. There are accounts I've read of tank battles, both Allied and Axis. There was one account of a German tank battle. The majority of the tanks did not even make it into combat because they broke down. Tracks would often break and they would have to get out and fix them. The engines would malfunction. They didn't have the parts they needed at the front at all the time, so they might have to wait on parts or fuel or oil. So the early tanks were not very reliable if we consider our modern tanks of today, because they were trying to figure out how to use these things and how to make them better on the fly.